honorable men, and I have broken wind with the finest of them. But I could play the woman with mine eyes and braggart with my tongue, but gentle heavens, cut short all intermission. Front to front bring thou this farting fiend of Scotland and myself. Within my sword's length set him, and if he... Sorry, it is almost impossible for me to speak of Shea Ray without waxing Shakespearean.
Aww.
Raymond Dale Greenwald Sewell was born in 1950 at an unknown location in San Francisco, California. His mother was the lovely starlet Hyacinth April Greenwald, recently of Haight at Ashbury. The identity of his biological father is shrouded in the swirling San Francisco fog of urban legend. Some say his dad was a young Jack Kennedy on his way home from the War in the Pacific in 1945. Impossible? You do the math. Ray Sewell had a very, very, very long gestation period. That's all I'm saying. Look at him, that striking face, destined for a cereal box or milk carton, sort of a cross between JFK and Abraham Lincoln. Most certainly presidential material, especially if you are judging by today's standards.
Way to lower the bar!
The young Raymond grew up tough in the projects of China Basin and the Mission District. At the age of 8, his mother remarried and Ray moved to the Emerald Hills above Redwood City, California. It was here he first encountered his love for nature and the little psychoactive mushrooms that grew among the idyllic redwood trees. Shortly after this discovery, he was observed cooking and selling toadstools for his classmates at Emerald Elementary School. Ray was then enrolled in the elite and remote Alcatraz School for Gifted Boys. It was here that he met his lifelong friend, Jerome John Garcia. An uncorroborated story of little-known fact tells of the two young lads, Ray was 12 at the time, on kitchen duty in the school cafeteria. While chopping potatoes and onions for the evening meal, the pair were distracted by an interminably long drum solo coming from the adjacent middle school music room. Confused by the offbeat tempo, Ray's knife slipped, causing him to slice off the last two knuckles of Jerry's right middle finger. Thinking quickly, Ray slipped the severed fingertip into a jar of formaldehyde, which he was using to flavor the dinner stew. Of course, the rest is legend. Despite his impairment, Garcia went on to play electric guitar with a famous band called the Warlocks. Meanwhile, Ray kept Jerry's fingertip in a small jar that was later displayed for many years on his fireplace mantel, but was eventually lost in a high-stakes, acid-induced poker game at a hippie house in La Honda, California, hosted by a former wrestler, Mary prankster, and obscure writer named Ken Kesey. These are little-known facts, but of course, a whole other story. After serving his time at Alcatraz, Ray was paroled back to live with his mom and stepdad near Woodside, California. Here he became a star athlete at Sequoia High School in Redwood City. In his senior year, Ray played starting fullback, Ramblin' Ray they called him, for the Fighting Purple Ravens football team, and helped lead them to the California State High School Championship in 1967. Yes, this is true. Ray also wrestled in high school and college and very nearly made the Team USA wrestling squad for the 1968 Olympics.
Whoa!
In fact, he would have been an Olympian if not for a minor flaw in the Olympic rules, which did not include his weight class. Many years later, the Zeppelin class was finally added to the wrestling, but then, of course, by then, Ray was well past his athletic prime. The story goes on and on. As we all know, Shea Ray's life is filled with little-known facts, far more than we could ever cover in one simple 68% eulogy. But here are a few. For instance, in 1969, he was accepted in a very competitive culinary apprentice program and became first assistant to the legendary chef Georges Bollard at the four-star L'Auberge French restaurant in the El Camino section of Redwood City. Formerly trained in classic French cuisine, he took his skills to Eugene, Oregon in 1972, where he cooked hot dogs for the Overdogs backstage at the first field trip on the Bonita site of the Oregon Country Fair. Here he was reunited with his old friend Jerry Garcia and a small group of fledgling musicians calling themselves the Grateful Dead. No one really knows what happened to them. With a name like that, it's not surprising. But Ray went on to parlay his culinary training into several failed or failing restaurants, the most famous of which was La Primavera. This was an exclusive, classically French restaurant in a town of hot dogs and burritos. It serves as a prime example of Ray's business acumen. It was beautiful and astonishingly expensive eatery occupied a historic house that was completely refurbished at great expense. It was one of Ray's most successful failures and set the bar for his restaurants to come. In the early 80s, shortly after the closing of La Primavera, Raymond Sewell was listed as one of Fortune List 500's top 100 most creatively impractical restaurateurs. It was a well-deserved honor, and he made the list for several years. It was at La Primavera that Ray met the stunningly blonde Dawn Leona. She was hired as a bartender by the restaurant manager. Dawn and Ray immediately fell in love. After a tragic accident with the dumbwaiter, excuse me, I mean to say with a tragic accident with the intellectually challenged waiter, Dawn was temporarily hospitalized. Much later, when she came out of the coma, she discovered that her and Ray had been happily married for several years, and that she was indeed pregnant. Their lovely daughter, Jennifer Shine, was born on January 30th, bringing a light and happiness into the world that would only be outshined by her own daughter, Ray's first grandchild, Annabella, born in 2012. Shay Ray has led a long and eventful life, made even more so by his own fictitious self-inventions. Who can forget events like the Girth First movement, subtitled Be Your Own Blimp, or Happy the Hummingbird, Take a Sip, My Little Pretty, or Ritz La Ritz, where salmon burgers came to die. The beautiful Shay Ray's Café des Cafés, where many an investor ate humble pie. The list grows ever longer. Ray showed us all how to successfully fail over and over and over. Ray made an art out of ideas that are easy to say and impossible to do. Ray led the way for every young, up-and-coming chef with a dream of becoming a successful restaurant owner, for every food truck owner with a vision of making something delicious out of nothing you can afford, for every fledgling tiny hummingbird flitting from bird feeder to bird feeder while the hungry house cats silently watched. Ray set an example which is impossible to ignore. Ray's message is clear and set strongly by his personal life. The message is this: don't do it! Sorry, I'm getting a little choked up here. Shay Ray was and is my longtime friend. Coming from the most humble of origins in one of the most exclusive and expensive and pampered areas of Golden, California, he ended up in a cement walk-up near downtown Eugene. Actually, it's pretty nice, better than my place. Ray reached the foremost heights of happiness, bliss, and self-absorption. He constantly reinvented a life that already teetered on the edge of believability. He allowed his creativity to blossom beyond the confines of other people's money. He brought laughter and joy into the lives of his many friends and left us all wanting a decent meal. And so he crosses the bridge into the here and after, smiling back at us all, the breeze filtering through his bushy gray beard as bits of crackers and sunflower seeds and crushed cashews, the remnants of a recent lunch, scatter in the wind. Good night, parting is such sweet sorrow. The gray-eyed morn smiles on the frowning night, checkering the eastern clouds with streaks of light, and flickered darkness like a drunkard reels from fourth day's path and Titan's wheels. Now, ere the sun advance his burning eye, the day to cheer and night's dank dew to dry. Good night, sweet prince, may you sleep with the salmon. One further footnote, a message from the future. Raymond Dale Greenwald Sewell shook off the mortal coil of earthly existence on October 24th, 2056, shortly after the 39th annual Before the Wait celebration. He was 106 years old and mostly bionic at that point. His eulogy was read by an ancient American humorist whose name no one could remember. After and prolonged cremation, his ashes were scattered in outer space among the stars, excepting for a small shaker of which was smuggled backstage during the opening night tour of an all-Android Grateful Dead tribute band called Jerry's Middle Finger. The Red Rocks Amphitheater was filled to capacity and loud as hell as Ray's ashes were mixed into the salsa at the catering table. Those groupies in attendance later reported eating the salsa with chips and refried beans, something they said tasted odd and left them with a lasting aftertaste, both sweet, crunchy, and impossible to define. Days later, every single one of them reported an almost uncontrollable urge to open a restaurant.